The fog that morning was thick enough to chew. It rolled in off the Thames like a living thing, swallowing the spires of London and muffling the city's heartbeat until even the gulls sounded half-drowned. Elias Crow stood on the Albert Embankment, coat collar turned up, watching the river slide past in greasy silence. He had come for the light. Photographers always chased light, but the light had vanished, and what remained was a gray so absolute it felt like the world had been erased and redrawn in pencil. He was 42, London-born but New York-raised after his parents split, and he carried both cities in the way he walked, the clipped stride of Manhattan, the sideways glance of the underground. His camera, a battered Leica M10, hung from his neck like a talisman. He had shot wars, weddings, wildfires, and one particularly harrowing fashion week in Milan, but nothing had prepared him for the hush that settled over the river that morning. It was the kind of quiet that made you listen for footsteps that weren't there. Elias raised the camera. Through the viewfinder the fog became architecture, swirling buttresses, dissolving arches. He clicked the shutter. The sound cracked the silence like a bone. Somewhere behind him a pigeon took flight, wings clapping against the damp air. He lowered the camera and saw her. She stood 10 feet away, half obscured by the mist, as though the fog had birthed her. Tall, red coat, hair the color of wet sand twisted into a knot at the nape of her neck. She was looking straight at him, unblinking, and in her gloved hand she held a single white rose. Elias felt the moment stretch, elastic and dangerous. He had photographed strangers before, Bedouin women in the desert, monks in the Himalayas, but none had looked at him the way this woman did, as if she already knew the shape of his regrets. "Morning," he said, because Englishmen say that even when the morning is trying to murder them. She tilted her head. American accent, soft around the edges. "You always photograph ghosts?" "Only the pretty ones." A smile flickered across her mouth, gone before it arrived. She stepped closer. The rose trembled between her fingers. Up close he saw the fine lines around her eyes, the faint scar that cut through her left eyebrow like a lightning strike. She smelled of rain and something sharper, gun oil, maybe, or the metallic tang of old blood. "I'm late," she said, but she didn't move. "For what?" "Everything." She pressed the rose into his palm. The stem was wrapped in black ribbon. "Keep it. It's dying anyway." Then she walked away, swallowed by the fog before he could ask her name. The rose was cold, thorns pricking through his glove. When he looked down, the ribbon had come undone and spelled a word in tiny, perfect stitches: "Remember." He told himself it was a prank. London was full of performance artists with too much time and not enough therapy. But that night, in his flat above a shuttered kebab shop in Bethnal Green, the rose refused to wilt. It sat in a jam jar on his windowsill, petals luminous against the sodium street light, and every time he passed it he felt the weight of her gaze. 2 days later he saw her again. He was in Manhattan, chasing a commission for a glossy magazine that wanted the soul of the city in 10 frames or less. He had flown in on the red-eye, bleary and jet-lagged, and was walking Bleecker Street at dawn when he spotted the red coat. Same woman, same posture, but now she stood beneath the awning of a closed jazz club, arguing with a man in a charcoal suit. The man's hand rested on her elbow, possessive, not gentle. Elias lifted his camera out of habit. The shutter clicked once, twice. The man looked up. His eyes were the flat gray of a winter sea. Elias lowered the camera. The woman was staring at him too, and this time there was no smile. She mouthed a single word he couldn't read. Then the man pulled her into a black town car and they were gone. He developed the film that night in a rented darkroom in Soho. The negative showed something he hadn't seen with his naked eye, the woman's lips forming his name. Elias. Clear as day. He told himself it was coincidence. He told himself a lot of things. The third time was in neither city. He had taken the Eurostar to Paris for a gallery opening, his own work, a series called Vanishings, photographs of places that no longer existed. The opening was a disaster. The curator got drunk and tried to kiss him, the critics called his work sentimental tourism, and the champagne tasted like battery acid. He left early and walked until he found himself on the Pont Alexander III, the bridge glittering like a jewelry box under the street lamps. She was there, leaning against the railing, red coat unbuttoned despite the cold. The white rose was gone. In its place she held a Polaroid camera, old school, the kind that spat out squares of chemical magic. "You're following me," he said. "Or you're following me." She raised the Polaroid and took his picture. The flash blinded him. When his vision cleared, she was peeling the photo from the camera, watching it develop. "Look." He took it. The image showed him standing on the bridge, but behind him the Seine was frozen solid, skaters gliding where water should have been. In the distance, Big Ben loomed impossibly over the Eiffel Tower. "What the hell?" "Time's a suggestion," she said. "Most people just agree to the same one." She told him her name was Mara Vale. She told him she was born in 1987 and 1923 and next Tuesday. She told him the rose was a key, and that he had already turned it. Then she kissed him. It wasn't romantic. It was clinical, almost surgical, the way a doctor might check a pulse. Her tongue touched the corner of his mouth and he tasted copper. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet. "I'm sorry," she said. "It started." "What started?" She pointed to the Polaroid. The frozen river was melting in the photograph, water bleeding through the ice like ink. "You have to choose." "Choose what?" But she was already walking away, coat flaring like a warning flag. He started after her and the bridge tilted. The ornate lampposts bent like reeds. The sky folded in on itself. He fell, not far, just enough to bruise, and when he opened his eyes he was back in London, on the Albert Embankment, fog thicker than ever. The Leica was gone. In its place hung the Polaroid camera, strap cutting into his neck. The first photograph was already inside. He pulled it out. It showed Mara standing in Times Square, but the billboards were blank and the yellow cabs were horse-drawn carriages. In the corner, someone had written in red ink, 1/12. He understood then that the cities weren't cities anymore. They were rooms in a house he hadn't known he'd entered. And Mara was the only other guest. He spent the next week mapping the doors. Paris opened from the back of a black cab in Soho. Tokyo lived inside a lift in the Shard that only stopped at floor 13.5. New Orleans breathed through a manhole cover in Harlem. Each place was a photograph waiting to be taken, and each photograph was a key to the next. He shot them all with the Polaroid, watching the images develop into impossible truths. The Brooklyn Bridge made of matchsticks, the Thames flowing uphill, the Statue of Liberty weeping rust. Mara was in every frame, always just out of reach. Sometimes she looked 25, sometimes 50, once a child with her hair in braids. She never spoke in the photographs, but the messages grew longer. February 12th, the rose remembers what you forget. March 12th, they're coming. For 12ths, don't trust the man in the charcoal suit. He learned the man's name was Calder. He learned Calder collected moments the way other people collected stamps. He learned Calder had once been Mara's lover, or brother, or both, depending on which timeline you asked. He learned that the house, the shifting cities, was a prison Calder had built to keep Mara from dying the way she was meant to, in a car crash on the M25 in 2019, or a gunshot in Chicago in 1933, or old age in a cottage that hadn't been built yet. Elias was the glitch. His camera, first the Leica, now the Polaroid, captured truths that couldn't be edited. Every photograph he took peeled back another layer of the lie. Calder wanted him dead. Mara wanted him to finish the role. There were 12 shots in the cartridge. He had taken 4. He found her again in a version of Las Vegas where the Strip was underwater and the slot machines dispensed pearls. She was barefoot, dress soaked to the thigh, feeding coins to a mechanical octopus. "You're running out of film," she said without turning. "I'm running out of sanity." "That's the same thing." She faced him. Her eyes were older now, crow-footed and tired. "Calder's close. He'll offer you a deal. Don't take it." "What deal?" Your life for mine. He'll say he can send you home, real time. He'll lie. Elias looked at the octopus. It blinked at him with eyes made of roulette wheels. What happens if I finish the roll? The house collapses. Calder loses his collection. I die the way I'm supposed to. And me? She touched his cheek. Her fingers were ice. You get to choose which version of you walks away. He wanted to ask what that meant, but the octopus spat out a pearl the size of a fist and the casino dissolved into sand. Shot 5 out of 12, Mara on the Great Wall of China, but the wall is made of photographs, millions of them, all showing Elias at different ages. In one he is 8, holding a Polaroid of his parents before the divorce. In another he is 90, alone in a hospital bed, clutching the same camera. He kept moving. Shot 6/12, Calder in a boardroom in a Manhattan that never sleeps, signing contracts with ink that screams when it dries. Shot 7 out of 12, Mara in a library where the books are blank until you open them, then they write your future in your own handwriting. He began to understand the rules. The cities weren't random, they were memories. His, hers, Calder's. The house fed on nostalgia the way a vampire feeds on blood. Every photograph he took was an exorcism. He found Calder in a version of Central Park where the trees grew upside down, roots clawing at the sky. Calder hadn't aged a day since Bleecker Street. He wore the charcoal suit like armor. You're persistent, Calder said. His voice was smooth, Midwestern, the kind of voice that sold life insurance to the dying. Most people give up after the third door. I'm not most people. No. You're the anomaly. Calder gestured, and the upside-down trees righted themselves. The park became ordinary, almost. Walk with me. They walked. Joggers passed, earbuds in, oblivious. A hot dog vendor argued with a pigeon. Calder bought 2 pretzels and handed one to Elias. Mara's sick, he said. Not in the way you think. She's a paradox. Every time she dies, she reboots. But each reboot costs. Memories, mostly. She's down to her last one. Which is? You. Calder bit into his pretzel. Salt crystallized on his lip. She thinks if she finishes the roll, she'll be free. She's wrong. The house isn't a prison, it's life support. Without it, she unravels. Elias stopped walking. Why tell me? Because I'm tired. Calder looked suddenly, achingly human. I've been keeping her alive for centuries. I thought if I collected enough moments, I could build her a perfect one. A forever. But forever's a lie. You know that. Elias thought of the rose, still blooming in his Bethnal Green flat. He thought of the way Mara's mouth had tasted of copper and endings. What happens if I stop? You go home. London, New York, whichever you prefer. The fog lifts. You wake up on the embankment with your Leica and a hangover. Mara dies quietly. I grieve. The house folds into itself and becomes a story someone tells in a pub. And if I finish? Calder smiled, and it was the saddest thing Elias had ever seen. Then you both lose. But you lose beautifully. He left Elias with the pretzel and a choice. Shot 8 out of 12, Mara in a hospital gown, hooked to machines that beep in Morse code. The code spells his name. He found her in the final city. It wasn't London or New York or anywhere he recognized. It was a street he had dreamed as a child, suburban, American, maple trees turning gold. The houses were all the same, white siding and green shutters, but the doors were different colors. Mara sat on the curb in front of a blue door, wearing jeans and a Smithsonian t-shirt. She looked 16. This is it, she said. The last door. He sat beside her. The Polaroid was heavy in his hands. 4 shots left. I talked to Calder. I know. He says you'll die. I will. But not the way he thinks. She picked up a maple leaf, twirled it by the stem. Death's not an end, Elias. It's a bookmark. I've died 1,000 times. This time I get to choose the next page. And me? You get to decide if you want to read it with me. He looked at the camera. The counter read 9 out of 12, but he hadn't taken the 8th shot. The house was lying again. Mara stood. There's something I need to show you. She led him through the blue door. Inside was his childhood bedroom, posters of the Beatles, a model spaceship dangling from the ceiling, the smell of his mother's lavender detergent. On the bed lay the Leica, lens cracked. I thought I lost this. You did. This is the moment you decided to become a photographer. Age 10. Your dad gave you the camera for Christmas. You took a picture of your mom crying in the kitchen. She never knew. He picked up the Leica. It was warm. Why show me this? Because every photograph is a theft. You steal a second and keep it forever. Calder taught me that. But you, she touched the cracked lens. You give it back. She took the Polaroid from him. Raised it. Took his picture. Shot 9 out of 12, Elias at 10, holding the Leica, eyes wide with wonder. Behind him, adult Elias stands in the doorway, watching himself. The room dissolved. They were back on the curb. The maple leaf was gone. Mara's hair was gray now, cut short. She looked like someone who had lived every year she claimed. 3 left, she said. What happens at 12? We find out who we are when no one's watching. They walked. The suburban street gave way to a beach at twilight, waves the color of bruised plums. A pier stretched into the darkness, lights flickering like dying stars. At the end stood Calder, coat flapping in the wind. He held the white rose. It's time, he called. Mara took Elias's hand. Her palm was calloused, a worker's hand. Whatever happens, don't let go. They walked the pier. The boards creaked under their weight. Halfway across, the lights went out. When they came back on, Calder was closer, rose extended. Last chance, he said. Walk away. Both of you. Mara stepped forward. Give it to me. Calder hesitated. Then he placed the rose in her hand. The thorns drew blood. She didn't flinch. She turned to Elias. Take the picture. Of what? Us. He raised the Polaroid. Through the viewfinder he saw them as they were, Mara bleeding, Calder weeping, himself caught between. He pressed the shutter. Shot October 12th, the 3 of them on the pier, but the pier is the Albert Embankment, fog rolling in. The roses in Mara's hand, petals falling like snow. The pier vanished. They stood on the embankment, dawn breaking over the Thames. The fog was lifting. Big Ben chimed 6. Calder looked smaller now, suit rumpled. It's not enough, he said. You need 12. Mara shook her head. We have what we need. She took the rose, pressed it into Elias's free hand. The thorns bit deep. Blood welled, mixing with hers. 2 left, she whispered. 1 for you. 1 for me. Calder lunged. Not at them, at the camera. Elias swung it away. Calder's fingers brushed the lens and the world stuttered. For a moment he saw every version of Calder, the boy who loved Mara, the man who lost her, the monster who caged her. Then Calder was gone, dissolved into the fog like ink in water. Mara was fading too. Her outline shimmered, translucent. Quickly, she said. Elias raised the camera. Aimed it at her. No, she said. At yourself. He turned the lens. The viewfinder showed his reflection, but it wasn't him. It was every Elias he might have been, the war photographer who died in Syria, the father who stayed in London, the old man in the hospital bed. They all looked back, waiting. He pressed the shutter. Shot 11/12, Elias, infinite, holding a camera that holds the world. The fog vanished. The sun rose, sudden and brutal. Mara was solid again, younger, the gray gone from her hair. She took the camera from his shaking hands. "One more," she said. She aimed it at the sky. The shutter clicked. Shot December 12th, a single white rose, blooming in mid-air, suspended between London and New York, between beginning and end.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, it really helps. Watch the full video for more details.